The ships came without warning. On a cold morning in March 2157, the sky above every major city on Earth turned dark, not from clouds, not from storms, but from metal. Thousands of vessels hung in the air like sleeping giants. They blocked the sun and cast shadows over entire nations. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, and it was terrifying. The Dominion had ruled the stars for 8,000 years. They controlled 3,000 star systems. They had conquered dozens of species. To them, Earth was just another world filled with primitive creatures, another collection to add to their empire. Lord stood on the bridge of his command ship and looked down at the blue planet. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 eyes that never blinked. He had done this many times before. He knew exactly how it would end. "Begin the acquisition," he said calmly. The invasion lasted 11 days. Earth's armies fought with everything they had. Missiles flew into the sky. Jets attacked the alien ships. Soldiers fired their weapons until their guns melted from the heat. But it meant nothing. They had technology that humans could not understand. Their gravity weapons crushed tanks like paper. Their neural fields made soldiers fall asleep where they stood. Their shields laughed at nuclear bombs. Cities burned. Governments fell. By the 5th day, half of humanity's military was gone. By the 8th day, the remaining leaders tried to surrender. By the 11th day, it was over. Lord broadcast his message to every screen, every radio, every device on the planet. His 4 eyes stared into the camera without emotion. "You are now property of the Dominion," he announced. "Serve well and you will be permitted to exist. Resist and you will be erased. This is not a negotiation. This is your new reality." The collection began. Humans were sorted like animals. The strong ones went to mining colonies on distant asteroids. The smart ones went to laboratories to work for scientists. The beautiful ones went to pleasure stations to entertain their new masters. Children were separated from parents. Husbands were torn from wives. Families that had survived the invasion were broken apart and scattered across the galaxy. Those over 12 years old received the chip. It was a small device, no bigger than a grain of rice. They inserted it at the base of the skull. The chip did not control thoughts. It did something worse. It monitored them. If a human felt too much anger, too much rebellion, too much hope, the chip sent a signal. Then the punishment came. Pain beyond description. Pain that made strong men scream and beg for death. They called it the Compliance Network. They were very proud of it. Within 2 years, Earth was empty. 8 billion humans had been moved to every corner of the Dominion. Their planet was left as a monument, a reminder of what happened to species that existed in space. Sometimes, Dominion officials would bring important guests to see the abandoned cities. They would walk through silent streets and laugh at the primitive technology. They would call it educational. On a mining asteroid called KR7714, far from Earth and far from hope, a woman named swung her pickaxe into rock. Before the invasion, she had been commander of the United Nations ship Defiance. She had been one of humanity's best military minds. Her ship had been among the first to engage the fleet. It had been destroyed in 3 minutes. She had survived only because a piece of debris knocked her unconscious before she could go down with her ship. Now she was a miner. Slave number 77142847. Her uniform was gone. Her rank was meaningless. Her chip hummed quietly at the base of her skull, waiting for her to feel something it did not like. But was patient. She had always been patient. In the mines, she watched. She listened. She learned which guards were lazy and which were cruel. She learned when the surveillance systems had gaps. She learned which humans still had fire in their eyes and which had truly given up. At night, when the lights went out and the miners were locked in their quarters, she would lie in her bunk and think. Not about revenge. The chip would catch that. She thought about mathematics. She thought about patterns. She thought about systems. Every system had weaknesses. Every machine could be broken. Every empire could fall. She just needed to find the cracks. Months passed. Then years did her work. She never complained. She never fought back. Her compliance rating was perfect. The overseers started to trust her. They gave her small responsibilities, access to repair tools, permission to move between sections. They thought she was broken. They were wrong. In the third year found her first crack. A young engineer named David had figured out how to send messages through the mining equipment without triggering alarms. It was slow. It was limited, but it was invisible to the... We could talk to other minds, David whispered to her one night. Other colonies, maybe even other worlds. Looked at him for a long moment. The chip in her skull was silent. She had learned to think around it, to keep her emotions flat while her mind raced with possibility. Then we talk, she said. But carefully. We take years if we need to. We build something they cannot see. And when we are ready, when we are everywhere, we move together. David nodded. He understood. They called their network the Ember, a small fire that could not be seen, a heat that grew in the darkness, one person at a time, one world at a time, spreading slowly, quietly, patiently across the Dominion. They had conquered many species. They had built an empire on the broken backs of 100 civilizations. They believed they understood how to control lesser beings. But they had never met humans before. They did not know that humans could smile while hiding knives. They did not know that humans could wait for decades and never forget. They did not know that the most dangerous human was not the one who fought back, but the one who pretended to surrender. In the minds of KR7714 swung her pickaxe and smiled at her guards. She worked hard. She caused no trouble. Her chip reported perfect compliance. And deep inside her patient heart, the ember began to grow. 23 years passed. To the Dominion, the humans had become a success story. Reports from across the empire praised them. Efficient workers, quick learners, minimal resistance. The taxonomists, the scientists who studied conquered species, wrote long papers about how fast humans had accepted their place. The Terran species shows remarkable adaptability, one famous paper concluded. Within a single generation, they have become among our most productive servants. Their initial aggression has been completely suppressed, recommended for expanded deployment. Lord, now even older and more powerful, sometimes used the human conquest as an example in his speeches. This is how civilization works, he would say. The strong guide the weak, the advanced uplift the primitive. The humans understand this now. They are grateful. He could not have been more wrong. On 200 worlds, in mines and factories and laboratories and estates, humans worked. They smiled at their masters. They bowed their heads. They said yes and thank you and of course. Their compliance chips never triggered. Their behavior was perfect. And beneath the surface, the ember burned. The network had grown beyond anything had first imagined. What started as whispered messages between minds had become something much larger. Human engineers, forced to maintain technology, learned every system inside and out. They found the weaknesses. They memorized the codes. They discovered that the compliance network had a central hub, and that hub could be reached. Human scientists, working in Dominion laboratories, mapped the biology of their masters. They learned that needed specific atmospheric conditions. They learned about allergies, about diseases, about pressure points that could cause pain or death. They wrote nothing down. They kept everything in their heads. Human soldiers, now servants and workers, trained in secret. They made weapons from mining tools. They practiced fighting techniques in storage rooms after lights out. They taught their children, quietly, carefully, so that the next generation would be ready. Was 61 years old now. Her hair had turned gray. Her hands were rough from decades of work, but her mind was sharper than ever. The other humans called her the Gray Mother. She had contacts on almost every world where humans lived. The network used many tricks to communicate: messages hidden in shipping manifests, codes buried in maintenance reports, songs that sounded innocent but contained information. The never noticed. They were not looking. Why would they? The humans were compliant. But the Ember was not alone in its suffering. Other species had been conquered too. There were tall beings with blue skin and gentle hearts. They had been slaves for 300 years. The Hollowborn were creatures of living crystal who sang to communicate. They had served the Dominion for 5 centuries. The Silk Weavers, the Stone Mines, the Pale Wanderers, all of them had been broken long ago. Reached out to them, she offered alliance, she offered hope. They refused. "You do not understand," a elder told her through secret channels. "We have seen rebellions before, hundreds of them. The Dominion crushes them all, they make examples, they destroy entire worlds. Your fire will only bring ash." A hollow-born messenger sang a warning. "The masters are old, they have seen everything, they have defeated everything. Your species is young and foolish. You will bring suffering upon yourselves and upon us." Listen to all of them. She respected their fear. She understood their doubt. They had been slaves for so long that they could not imagine freedom anymore. But she did not agree. She sent back a single message, one that would be repeated in whispers across the galaxy for centuries to come. "Then watch what suffering looks like when it has nothing left to lose." The preparations continued. Years of careful planning, years of patience, years of smiling at masters while counting the days. Human hackers found pathways into the compliance network. They could not shut it down alone, but they discovered that if signals were sent from enough locations at exactly the same moment, the system would overload. It would crash. The chips would go silent. Human spies mapped the patrol routes of every fleet. They learned which worlds were heavily defended and which were vulnerable. They stole ship designs and weapon blueprints. Human engineers, working in Dominion shipyards, began to hide modifications, small changes that would not be noticed until they were needed. Human leaders emerged on every world. Each one knew their role. Each one knew the plan. Each one knew the signal. The date was chosen carefully. The anniversary of Earth's fall. The day humanity had lost everything. It would become the day they took it back. On the night before, sat alone in her quarters. She was too old to fight now. Her body was weak, but her mind had built something that would shake the stars. She thought about her daughter taken from her 20 years ago. She did not know if the girl was alive or dead. She thought about her husband killed during the invasion. She thought about Earth, empty and forgotten. She thought about all the humans who had died in chains, all the families torn apart, all the children who had grown up knowing nothing but service. Tomorrow everything would change, or everyone would die. There was no middle ground. Closed her eyes. She did not pray. She had stopped believing in gods long ago. Instead, she made a promise to every human who had ever suffered, a promise to every generation that would come after. "We will not be forgotten," she whispered. "We will not be erased, and we will never ever kneel again." Across the galaxy, humans went asleep one final time as slaves. They dreamed of home. They dreamed of freedom. They dreamed of fire. In the morning, the ember would become a blaze. They slept peacefully that night. Their empire was stable. Their slaves were compliant. Their future was secure. They did not know that they had made the worst mistake any civilization could make. They had assumed that because humans were quiet, they were broken. They had forgotten that the deepest rage makes no sound. And they had not noticed that across 200 worlds, 8 billion humans were all watching the same clock, counting down the same seconds, waiting for the same moment. The moment when the chains would shatter. The moment when the galaxy would learn what humanity truly was. Dawn came, and the shattering began. At exactly 600 Galactic Standard Time, every compliance chip in the Dominion went silent. They did not understand what happened at first. Alarms began screaming in monitoring stations across the Empire. Screens that had shown billions of green lights suddenly went dark. Technicians ran to their consoles, trying to restart systems, trying to find the problem. They found it too late. On 200 worlds, humans stopped pretending. In the mines of KR-7714, workers picked up their tools and turned them into weapons. The guards had never seen humans fight before. Not really fight. They died confused, reaching for alarms that no longer worked. In the shipyards above Prime, human engineers activated the modifications they had hidden for years. Ships that belonged to the Dominion suddenly belonged to humanity. Their weapons turned inward. Orbital stations exploded in chains of fire. In the estates of the wealthy, servants who had poured wine and cleaned floors for decades walked calmly to their masters' bedrooms. They carried knives from kitchens. They carried tools from gardens. They carried 23 years of silent hatred. They called it the shattering. Humanity called it Liberation Day. Lord woke to the sound of screaming. His 4 eyes opened slowly. For a moment, he did not understand. He was in his private chambers He was surrounded by guards and protected by the most advanced security in the galaxy. Nothing could touch him. Then his door opened, and his servants walked in. There were 7 of them, humans he had owned for 15 years. They had dressed him. They had fed him. They had stood silently in corners while he discussed the management of their entire species. He had never learned their names. Now they stood before him, with weapons in their hands and fire in their eyes. "What is this?" Lord demanded. "The compliance network." "Is gone," said the man in front. His name was. He had served in Lord's household since the day his daughter was taken from him. He had smiled every day. He had bowed every day. And every day he had imagined this moment. Lord tried to reach for a weapon. He was too slow. Humans grabbed his arms and forced him to his knees. For the first time in his long life, the architect of humanity's enslavement knew what it felt like to be helpless. "How?" he asked. His voice was shaking. "You were compliant, you were broken." Look down at him. There was no anger in his face anymore, just cold satisfaction. "We were never broken," he said. "We were waiting." Lord, High Taxonomist of the Dominion, died on his knees in his own bedroom. History does not record his last words, only his last question and the answer that humanity gave. Across the Empire, the same scene repeated millions of times. Who had thought themselves safe discovered that safety was an illusion. Guards who had thought themselves strong found out that strength means nothing when you are outnumbered. Officials who had thought themselves clever realized that humans had been cleverer for decades. But Liberation Day was just the beginning. Within hours, the Dominion military responded. 30 battle fleets were ordered to converge on human-held positions. Admirals who had never lost a war prepared to crush what they called a minor disturbance. They expected to restore order within days. They did not expect what happened at New Brisbane. New Brisbane was a colony world on the edge of space. 10 million humans lived there, working farms that fed the Empire. It was supposed to be defenseless. It was supposed to be easy. When the first fleet arrived, they found something impossible. Human ships filled the space around the planet, not stolen vessels. Something new. Ships built in secret over 20 years, using technology that humans had not just but improved. Sleek and fast and armed with weapons the Dominion had never seen. Admiral Orris, commander of the First Fleet, demanded immediate surrender. The response came from a gray-haired woman on the largest human ship. Commander had not planned to be here. She was supposed to coordinate from safety. But when she heard that New Brisbane was under attack, she could not stay behind. She was too old to swing a weapon, but she could still lead. Her ship was called the TRS Defiance, named for the vessel she had lost 23 years ago. named for the spirit that they had tried to destroy. She looked into the camera and broadcast on all frequencies. Her voice was calm. Her words were ice. You took our world. You took our children. You thought you took our future. Now we take everything you have. The Battle of New Brisbane lasted 6 hours. They fought with 8,000 years of military tradition. They fought with superior numbers and ancient tactics that had crushed countless enemies. They fought with the confidence of masters facing slaves. Humans fought with rage. Human ships moved in patterns they had never seen. They attacked from impossible angles. They used weapons that cut through shields like paper. They communicated in codes that could not be broken, responded to threats before they happened, adapted to every counterattack within minutes. 19 capital ships were destroyed. Thousands of smaller vessels were captured or disabled. Human losses were minimal. Admiral Orris sent one final message before his flagship exploded. "What are you?" No human answered. They did not need to. News of New Brisbane spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. Other fleets hesitated. Other conquered species watched in disbelief. They who had refused to join wept with something that might have been hope. The Hollowborn sang songs they had not sung in centuries. The impossible had happened. Slaves had defeated masters. The weak had crushed the strong. The universe had changed. On the bridge of the Defiance allowed herself one moment of emotion. Tears ran down her weathered face. Tears for her daughter, tears for her husband, tears for Earth. Then she wiped them away and turned to her crew. "This is only the beginning," she said. "We have won a battle. Now we win a war. Send word to every human fleet. We do not stop. We do not negotiate. We do not show mercy." She looked at the stars through the viewport. Somewhere out there, the empire that had enslaved her people was beginning to crumble. "They wanted us to be their tools," she said quietly. "Now let them learn what happens when tools turn in the hand." The war for humanity's future had begun. And humanity intended to win. The Dominion did not know how to surrender. For 8,000 years they had been the greatest power in the galaxy. They had crushed rebellions. They had destroyed civilizations. They had erased entire species from existence. The idea that they could lose was not just unlikely, it was unthinkable. After New Brisbane, the High Council met in emergency session. Old voices argued in ancient halls. Some wanted negotiation, some wanted caution, but most wanted blood. "These are slaves," thundered council leader. "They have forgotten their place. We will remind them, mobilize everything, every fleet, every soldier, every weapon. We will burn them out of existence and salt the ground where they stood." The full military might of the Dominion awakened. 500 battle fleets, millions of soldiers, weapons that had ended civilizations. For the first time in centuries, the Empire prepared for total war. They believed victory was certain. They were very, very wrong. Humans did not fight like other species. They understood war as a formal thing. Fleets met fleets. Armies faced armies. Battles had rules and traditions and honor. This was how civilized beings fought. Humans had no interest in being civilized. Human infiltrators who had spent decades learning every secret of the Dominion struck at supply lines. Fuel depots exploded. Food shipments vanished. Ammunition convoys never arrived. Fleets found themselves running out of supplies in the middle of nowhere. Human hackers corrupted military systems. Ship computers gave wrong coordinates. Communication networks sent false orders. In one famous incident, an entire fleet attacked itself because its targeting systems had been secretly modified. Human spies walked among the enemy. They looked like servants. They talked like servants. They had been servants for 20 years. No one suspected them until the poison was already in the water, the bomb was already in the engine room, the knife was already at the throat. They called it cowardice. Humans called it survival. But the most terrifying thing about humans was how fast they learned. At the start of the war, human ships were good. Stolen technology, improved by clever engineers. By the third month, human ships were better. Every battle taught them something new. Every captured vessel gave them new ideas. Every defeat was studied, analyzed, and turned into victory. They fought with tradition. Humans fought with evolution. 1 year after Liberation Day, the war had turned completely. The Dominion was losing on every front. Their fleets were scattered. Their economy was collapsing. Their conquered species were growing restless. The human military had given itself a name, the Terran Reclamation Navy. Its symbol was a broken chain. Its motto was simple: never again. Admiral, now officially the highest-ranking human in the galaxy, directed the war from her flagship. She was 62 years old and tired. Her body ached. Her hair was white. But she would not rest until the job was done. The final push targeted Prime, the sacred heart of the Dominion, the place where the High Council met and the great temples stood. If it fell, the Empire fell. The siege of Prime lasted 3 months. Human fleets surrounded the planet. Defenders fought with desperate courage. For the first time, the Masters knew what it felt like to be trapped, to be helpless, to watch destruction approach and be unable to stop it. The breakthrough came from an unexpected weapon. Human scientists had studied gravity technology for years. They had not just learned how it worked, they had made it stronger, 100 times stronger. The gravity pulse bomb was tested only once before it was used. When it hit the orbital defense network of Prime, every station, every satellite, every weapon platform in range was crushed into twisted metal. The planet's shields flickered and died. The path was open. The High Council sent a desperate message. They offered everything: complete release of all human slaves, massive payments of resources and wealth, territory, apologies, anything. Admiral received the message on the bridge of the TRS Remembrance. Her officers watched her read it. The room was silent. She could end it here, accept the surrender, show mercy, be the bigger species. Part of her wanted to, part of her remembered what humanity had been before the chains: hopeful, curious, kind. But then she thought about her daughter, still lost somewhere in the galaxy. Maybe dead, probably dead. She thought about the millions of families torn apart, the billions who died in slavery, the generations who knew nothing but service. She thought about what they had done, and she thought about what would happen if humanity showed weakness now. Other empires were watching, other would-be conquerors. If humans could be bargained with, they could be tested again. She wrote her response carefully. Every word was chosen. Every sentence was measured. When she broadcast it, every species in the galaxy heard. You do not understand what you created. You took a species that was learning to reach for the stars with hope, and you taught us to reach with hate. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. There will only be consequence. The final assault began that night. Human soldiers landed on Prime. They walked through ancient streets that had never known invasion. They passed temples that had stood for. They did not burn. They did not loot. They simply took. The High Council was captured alive. They were not killed. That would have been too easy. Instead, they were put on trial. Every crime was read aloud. Every world they had conquered. Every species they had enslaved. Every horror they had committed in 8,000 years of dominion. The trial was broadcast across the galaxy. Every being with a screen watched as the mighty fell. The sentences were harsh. The council members would spend their remaining years doing labor, the same labor they had forced upon others, the same chains, the same conditions, the same hopelessness, until they died. Justice, humans decided, should be poetic. The Dominion shattered like glass. Without the council, without hope, it broke into 100 pieces. Former subject species rose up everywhere. They who had refused to join the rebellion finally found their courage. The Hollowborn sang songs of freedom. Others followed. In 18 months, an empire that had lasted 8,000 years ceased to exist. Humanity had not just won. Humanity had changed the galaxy forever. An admiral, watching the last flag come down, allowed herself to hope that somewhere, somehow, her daughter was still alive and free. 5 years after Liberation Day, the galaxy was a different place. The Dominion existed only in history books. Its great cities were ruins or museums. Its fleets were scrap metal floating in space. Its people, once proud masters of 3,000 worlds, now lived quietly under the watchful eyes of those they had enslaved. Where an empire had stood, something new had grown. The Galactic Concord was an alliance of free species. Hollowborn, silk weavers, stone mines, and dozens of others had come together. They were different in every way. Different bodies, different minds, different ways of seeing the universe. But they shared one thing: they had all known chains, and they never wanted to wear them again. At the center of the Concord, leading without ruling, stood humanity. The Terran Reclamation Navy was the most powerful military force in the known galaxy. Human ships patrolled trade routes. Human soldiers kept peace on troubled worlds. Human diplomats sat at every negotiating table, not because humans demanded it, because everyone else requested it. The galaxy had learned a simple truth: no one wanted to make humans angry. Earth had been reclaimed. The empty cities were full again. Children played in streets that had been silent for decades. Families rebuilt in homes their grandparents had abandoned. Life returned to the blue planet that had nearly been forgotten. But humanity was not the same. The species that had looked at the stars with wonder was gone. In its place was something harder, something watchful, something that remembered. Every human child learned the history. They learned about the invasion. They learned about the chains. They learned about the 23 years of patience and the night when the ember became a fire. They learned the names of heroes and the crimes of enemies. They learned that the universe was beautiful but dangerous, and that safety was something you earned, not something you were given. Admiral was 67 years old now. Her body was failing. She spent most of her days in a chair looking out at the sky. Doctors said she had months left, maybe a year. She did not mind. She had done what she needed to do. Her daughter had been found, alive, working on a farming colony in what used to be space. The reunion was quiet, private. After 25 years apart, there was too much to say and no words big enough to say it. They simply held each other and cried. Some wounds never fully heal, but some families find each other again. The Galactic Concord asked to give one final speech, a gathering of all free species, representatives from 100 worlds. She did not want to go. She was tired and she had never liked speeches. But she understood that some moments required symbols, and she had become the greatest symbol humanity had. She stood at the podium slowly with help from her daughter. The assembly hall was vast. Thousands of beings from dozens of species watched in silence. Some had faces. Some had crystals that sang. Some were shapes that human eyes could barely understand. All of them were free. Looked out at them. She remembered when they had refused to join the rebellion. She remembered when the Hollowborn had warned that hope was foolish. Now they sat before her, citizens of a free galaxy, waiting for her words. She spoke slowly. Her voice was weak, but every being heard. "We did not ask for this war," she began. "We did not want to become what we became. We were a young species. We dreamed of exploring the stars. We dreamed of making friends among them. We dreamed of a universe that would welcome us." She paused. The silence was complete. "Instead, we learned that the universe is cruel. We learned that there are monsters among the stars who will take everything you love because they can, who will break your families, steal your children, and grind your people into dust because you are weak and they are strong." Her eyes moved across the assembly. Some representatives looked away. Their species had watched humanity's enslavement and done nothing. They knew it, she knew it, but she did not blame them. Fear was a powerful thing. When you learn this truth, she continued, you have two choices. You can break. You can accept that the universe is cruel and let it crush you. Many species have made this choice. There is no shame in it. Survival is its own victory. She straightened as much as her old body would allow. Or you can become something else. You can take your pain and your rage and your grief, and you can forge them into something new, something hard, something that the monsters learn to fear. The assembly was completely still. Humanity made the second choice. We became what we needed to become. We are not proud of everything we did. We carry scars that will never heal. We remember costs that can never be repaid, but we survived. And more than survived, we won. She looked at them one final time. Her voice grew softer but somehow carried even further. Let this be the lesson the galaxy remembers. Humanity can be befriended, we can be traded with, we can be allied with, we can be loved. We remember kindness and we repay it tenfold. Her eyes hardened. But we also remember cruelty. And those who choose to harm us, who choose to enslave us, who choose to break our families and destroy our worlds, they will find no negotiation, no mercy, no forgiveness. She leaned forward. We do not forget, and we do not stop, ever. The assembly remained silent for a long moment after she finished. Then the representative stood. He bowed deeply, his blue skin shimmering. Then the Hollowborn began to sing, a melody of respect and sorrow and hope. One by one, every species in the hall rose to their feet. Not applause, something deeper, acknowledgement. Admiral the Grey Mother, the architect of humanity's freedom, bowed her head once. Then she let her daughter help her from the stage. Her part was done. In the years that followed, no species attempted to conquer another within conquered space. No slavers operated in territories that human ships patrolled. The old ways of domination and subjugation faded, not because the galaxy had become enlightened, but because the galaxy had learned to fear the alternative. Somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, other civilizations heard rumors about the young species from a small blue world. They heard about the chains and the fire and the empire that fell. They heard about the gray-haired woman who had smiled at her masters while building their destruction. And they decided, quietly, that perhaps those particular stars were best left alone. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy, but the galaxy had learned to tremble. And somewhere on a reclaimed Earth, children looked up at the night sky without fear. They saw stars that their ancestors had dreamed of reaching. They saw a universe that had tried to break their species and failed. They saw home. And that was enough.